Hello, my name is Steve Bayless and I'm here with Will O'Neill and Julia Martin, and we're going to be exploring the relationship between national murder rates and GDP, as well as the factors that cause murder rates to fluctuate between various countries. While the initial data in this graph starts out in the 1950s showing no correlation, the data points slowly begin to show a negative slope, especially as the data from more countries is introduced. As a result, it can be seen that a country's murder rate and GDP are negatively correlated. Much of this can be attributed to the fact that where people are making less and less money, they are often forced to desperate actions to provide for themselves and their families. Unfortunately, these actions often include murder. Consequently, as can be seen with the most recent data including many African nations, murder rates begin to hike up as GDP decreases. Looking deeper into the murder rates themselves, it can be seen that although some Western European countries fluctuate from the 1950s to 1980, they then seem to unify as one trend line with a very stagnant murder rate. The United States have a very stagnant murder rate as well, as far back as the data will show. However, this number floats around 5 to 10 people per 100,000, whereas that of the Europeans remains a touch under 1 person per 100,000. Much of this can be attributed to the economic diversity in the United States, where urban areas often have poorer people, leading to the same result as we previously saw with low GDP nations. Consequently, the US has 4 cities included in the top 50 most dangerous in the world, whereas the UK, Spain, and France, countries with similar GDP per capita, have none. As a result, these urban areas with diverse cultural backgrounds have murder rates of up to 20 per 100,000 people, as is the case in New Orleans, severely changing the nation's average.
One trend we noticed on the graphic were the violent changes in the murder rate of Guatemala. The graph shows the murder rate declining fairly quickly in 1971 until about 1980 when it skyrockets to 131 murders per 100,000 people, which is by far the highest out of the countries that we have data for on this statistic. Some research was conducted and it was discovered that the Guatemalan Civil War was to blame for the sporadic murder rate. The Civil War started in the 1960s because of large inequality regarding economic and political life. This inequality centered around people of Mayan descent who had long been oppressed in the country. Interestingly, the murder rate declined in the 1970s when Mayan people started protesting. These protests included Mayan people demanding greater equality and more inclusion of their language and culture in society. 1980 is the year the murder rate spikes, and this coincides exactly with the Guatemalan government organizing attacks against protesters. These attacks included destroying 626 villages, which killed about 200,000 people in addition to displacing 1.5 million. These attacks were carried out by the army or private contractors following orders from the army. The US government supported this repressive regime as part of their anti-communist policies during the Cold War. The Civil War ended when the government signed a peace treaty with the Guatemalan National Revolutionary Unity.
Bosnia and Herzegovina is another country that experienced a sharp rise in murder rates that coincided with a decrease in GDP per capita. In 1990, this graph illustrates an all-time low in murder rates, followed by a sharp increase in 1992. The murder rates continue to spike until about 2002, where it tapers off. GDP per capita, however, begins and continues to increase after 1993. Bosnia, like Guatemala, experienced a genocide within the past 50 years. This graph shows the sharp increase in murder rate during the early 1990s, which parallels the genocide of 92 to 95. From 1992 to 1995, the Bosnian Serb army committed mass atrocities against Bosnian Muslims and Bosnian Croats, who were mostly Roman Catholic. The army and its leaders are responsible for the murder of approximately 8,000 Bosnian men and boys, and the deportation of 25 to 30,000 women, children, and senior citizens. In addition to this, genocidal acts such as murder, rape, torture, the targeting of political leaders and intellectuals, unlawful plunder of Bosnian property, and the destruction of places of worship were committed. Due to civil and political unrest in the country, the murder rate did not stop, but at the tail end of the timeline there's a visible yet slight decrease in 2003.